Once you've been playing something for a while, you start being a bit more numb to the pretty graphics, the music, the sound design, everything that gives the game identity on the surface, and instead, the focus becomes how it feels mechanically. Especially this is the case with competitive multiplayer games. Does this character's attack feel too stubby? Does their movement feel good? How does this matchup make you feel? I think this focus on balance is stronger in fighting games in particular than other competitive genres because fighting games are typically pretty traditional in their approach. Cosmetics aren't the norm. 2XKO is the first traditional fighting game to adopt a free-to-play live service model over a decade after most other genres. Even League of Legends balance talk is diluted because of conversations about new skin lines, new game modes, different lore, and the implications of that lore on the greater narrative, new comics and animated trailers, but as soon as you get into a community for a fighting game, someone will let you know that Potemkin has been top tier for too long, Mai is overpowered, and not just because she inflicts a mental stack debuff on her opponent. How Asuka in Tekken is something, I don't know. I have no idea, I just heard things are kind of fucked up over there right now. Either way, in my personal experience, by far the most common topic in the FGC is game balance. And what better way to illustrate the way you feel about it than by structuring it into a tier list? And that's kind of the most obvious problem with them that you're probably well aware of. They're an attempt at simplifying, like grading a movie. There are some 7 out of 10 masterpieces, the cultural impact of which is remembered decades later. You can never tell a matchup spread or specific nuance by a simple grade. I'm not against tier lists, I actually really like them. But the point I will be making will be all about how the crucial thing they require is context, and why tier lists are most likely not for you. I'm mostly focusing on fighting games since that is the arena I'm most familiar with. If you come from a different background, I'd honestly love to hear your perspective as well, but as an FG player, I'm inundated with tier lists. They're popular on Twitter, people make videos about them, people even post them to wikis to help newcomers get a better feel of any given game's balance. But in my opinion, that's kind of the worst case scenario unless that newcomer has a way to receive additional context. Not saying they should be removed because they do have their use, but there's caveats. I will use Guilty Gear Strive as my main example because that's the game I'm most familiar with. Elphelt is arguably the easiest character to pilot. She has big attacks, projectiles, a neutral skip, but most importantly, a cross-up that leads into a combo, and a Rekka that leads into 2 unreactable high-low mix-ups. Because of her low health, low damage, and certain other issues, she's typically placed somewhere in the middle of most tier lists. Her tools have counterplay that most intermediate to pro players are well acquainted with, but a novice Elphelt playing against another novice player would gladly take advantage of her neutral tools, easy combos, and pre-packaged mix. A character that takes it, in my opinion, a bit further is Venom. He's quite complicated, has plethora of ways his balls interact with each other, varied combo routing, and ways to dominate space in neutral, but he doesn't need all that to win. Despite being bottom tier, technically, if you learn how to use Stinger, his fastest, most straightforward projectile, and his anti-air, you're basically set. Mastering these 2 things is very simple, and there are people that climb all the way to the top ranks primarily through spamming this strategy. Obviously there's a bit more to it, but that's kind of the core. He's a bottom tier, but if you don't learn today, he might as well be unbeatable. On the opposite end of that, we have Asuka, who can create completely uninteractable scenarios with his projectiles. Quite strong at his highest level, and yet he completely crumbles if you don't know what you're doing. As soon as your mana shield breaks, you're as good as dead. He has the least health in the game. But what if you're not a newbie though? You might think this doesn't apply to you because you've been around, you've spent hundreds of hours in your favorite game, you've encountered all kinds of situations and matchups, you know the frame data, etc. Well, here's the thing. You might be in the top 20% of the player base, maybe top 10. Let's say you're average and you're anywhere between gold and platinum in Strive, or platinum to diamond in Street Fighter 6, or whatever Tekken's got going on. The pros are built different. And those are the people making the tier lists, at least the ones you're likely to see on Twitter or on wikis or in your recommended feed. These are the types of people that might say that while a character is strong, they're still mid-tier because their setups have counterplay or that you can contest their offense in such and such specific scenario, The average player, you, or even if you're in the higher skill bracket, have very different context going into this conversation. If a character has a bunch of gimmicky setups that you can simply disrespect, unless you've labbed that exact scenario and your mental stack isn't overloaded, it might as well be real. What's the meaningful difference between a setup that you can't do anything about and a setup that you can do something about, but you just don't have the experience or the niche knowledge to know what to do? Practically none. And for you to learn every aspect of a fighting game, it will take you hundreds upon hundreds of hours of intense learning, and for some people, it's gonna take over 1,000 or several thousand hours. So if the approach is, well, the character isn't that strong, you just have to put in hours and hours and hours of practice to beat it, it's not actually applicable to most people's experiences. To be clear, I don't necessarily want a disclaimer before every tier list on every bit of character discourse. What I'm against is folding your arms and saying, well, this character's top 1, nothing we can do. Or giving into the idea that your character can't do anything just because they are bottom tier, according to how likely they are to win tournaments. This is actually part of why I like the style of tier lists that Diaphone has done with how easy a character is to learn, though they're still colored with the perspective of a highly experienced player, where he might occasionally gloss over things that are hard for actual complete beginners, which is fine. You can't make content that caters to literally everybody, but especially I like Lord Knight's tier lists. I'm pretty happy with him being arguably the biggest Strive content creator, in part because in his approach, he makes it crystal clear that his opinion is of the character's viability in pro play, in the context of tournament circuits, whether something is regional or national or whatever else. The fact that the tiers are explicitly called that removes the ambiguity of letters. And not every person looking at it will immediately understand that this is in the context of pro play, and they will still probably apply it to themselves to some level, but I don't know if you can do anything about that when making the tier list, besides just giving the context in the associated video or post. Another thing I appreciate is when tier lists are used as a genuine jumping off point to discuss specific things about the game. I've had some discussions about character balance where I actually learned how to play better against the character I was struggling with, and my opinion of their power level went down because of it. When I say tier lists are not for you, I mean that they're not for you to map onto the way you experience the game, or to poison the well early on. In my experience of learning new fighting games, I got way more out of directly talking to people and having them show me stuff about each character and what they excel at. In fact, I encourage you to make your own tier lists, as long as you provide context of your experience and use it as an opportunity to have a civil conversation to learn and teach each other. Differentiate between a personal dislike of the character's gameplay design and whether they're actually overpowered. Seek to understand how to deal with the thing that's making you mad instead of just being mad for its own sake. Actually, as a perfect example of this, there was this post a few years back of a bunch of young kids learning how to play Guilty Gear Plus R in class. The tier lists they came up with were basically nonsense compared to the established opinions of the game at the time, but made perfect sense for a bunch of new players that were just discovering the game and the genre for the first time. And I think when talking about balance, all aspects of it should be considered. You can't really expect game developers to cater only to the absolute top pro play when that is basically a fraction of a percentage. Not to say that they should cater to the absolute casuals either, of course. In my opinion, you can balance the two at least somewhat well. In fact, I actually appreciate characters like Elphelt and Asuka existing, because Elphelt isn't the strongest character, but she's pretty good for beginners to get their foot in the door, while Asuka has a lot of depth and rewards a lot of time put into him. I like the variety, even though it makes the game harder to balance. When it comes to discussions of power and balance and tier lists, I think often we try to shed that learner or newcomer persona in favor of the expert, even if it's not explicit. It feels really good to have strong and rigid opinions that are backed up by some experience, so much so that we forget to keep being curious and have some humility. Did you lose because their character was strong? Or could you have done something else? Could you have not made that one mistake? Could you have anti-aired better, or whiff punish better, or adjust to your opponent's playstyle? Was your execution on point? Did you drop combos? Did you use the proper option selects? The list goes on and on and on. Fighting games are very complex and there's always something to be looking for. If you're in silver, gold, platinum, diamond, or even a fair bit beyond that, and you're losing to a top tier character, it's entirely possible that not only do you have something to learn about that specific matchup, but that if you just had better knowledge of your own character and their strengths, or better knowledge and mastery of fundamentals, you could have won with ease. Hello, thanks for checking the video out. I'm kind of on a journey to have a better learner mindset myself, with me taking every character and strive to vanquish her and all. I struggle with ego quite a bit, unfortunately. You can see that in this Unji video quite well. What should have been a simple climb actually took much longer because I was so held back by ego and preconceptions. My Happy Chaos run is a bit more chill though, so you can check that one out instead if you'd like. Right now I'm doing Asuka, so if you want to see the streams, follow me here or preferably on Twitch because it's easier to read the chat there. See ya!